Leadership, as I like to speak to it, is about getting people to do what they don't want to do, which is change. Leadership, contrary to a lot of people, is not a popularity sport, it's a performance. It's based on what you get done, not just what you talk about. I'm going to use an example here that you bear with me. Okay, I'm pressing the button here. I got something to throw. I'm pressing the button. Oh, there we go. An example of dealing with leadership during a disaster. This is a natural disaster, which was followed by a man-made disaster, which is most of the case what happened. What we come to grips with in the world today, as we see today in Nepal and last week in Chile, that on any given day, Mother Nature can break anything built by man. It's how we respond to that disaster that determine the level of leadership and how effective leadership is. One of the things I learned in New Orleans when you're in the middle of a disaster, as it was this natural disaster, which was followed by a man-made disaster in communications and leadership and logistics, it said one of the things you got to be prepared to do is to break the rules. Because the rules don't work in the middle of a disaster. The rules were all written for when things are going normal, during peacetime, if we may use that word. An example, it took us 4 days to get people from the convention center in New Orleans to the airport in New Orleans. Why? Because the airport was closed. The first 3 days, we sent people out by bus, all the way to Texas. Airports open, airplanes come in, the TSA people show up. We start loading the airplanes. 20 minutes into it, the TSA guy said, hey, we've got to stop loading the airplanes because we don't have enough equipment. So they tell one of my officer come in, he calls me up, I'm about to get on my helicopter, and I stop the motion, talk to this guy. I said, you know the deal, get him in a room, turn the BlackBerry on, let me talk to him. We're going direct communications. So the TSA guy came on and said, well, General, we've got to stop. We cannot continue the evacuation because we don't have enough equipment. And he sounded convinced. I said, well, I know why you're doing what you're doing. To ensure we got security. All this post 9/11 security checks. But I said, let me tell you something, mister. Because what I kept in the back of my mind is what the guy who flies around in the big blue airplane told me. Evacuate that city. General, you understand that, cowboy? Yes, sir. So I'm speaking with the TSA guy, and he says, you know, that's the rules, General. I say, well, let me tell you something. I know why you want to bring more people in and you want to do more detailed checks. But what I want to assure you is Osama bin Laden is not in New Orleans. I can tell you when you get in a mess, you're going to have your lawyer on one side, your public affairs person on the next, and the old dude that just sits around for when something bad happens come forward. And they got the checklist out. You got to be prepared to break that checklist. That's why it's so important that you build a team and people understand the purpose for which you are doing what you're doing.